Have you ever noticed that some of the biggest arguments in All in the Family were not actually caused by Archie Bunker? Yo, listen. I know that sounds crazy because Archie is usually the first person everybody thinks about when it comes to conflict. He is loud. He is stubborn. He is opinionated. He can turn a simple dinner conversation into a full-blown war in less than 30 seconds. But here is the thing. Michael, better known as Meathead, often walked into those same arguments carrying something just as dangerous as Archie's prejudice. A certainty. And trust me, this is what people do not realize about one of the most fascinating characters ever written for television. Welcome back, everybody. If you love classic television, deep character analysis, and exploring the hidden layers behind legendary sitcoms, then you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we are diving into one of the most overlooked aspects of Michael's personality, Mike arguing from certainty. And I am telling you right now, this is one of the reasons why All in the Family remains so brilliant more than 40 years after it ended. Because the show was never as simple as liberal versus conservative. It was never as simple as right versus wrong. It was never as simple as Archie bad and Mike good. Norman Lear was far too smart for that. Instead, he created two men who were absolutely convinced they understood the world. And that certainty fueled some of the greatest television arguments ever broadcast. One of my biggest hot takes about All in the Family is this. Michael was often just as stubborn as Archie Bunker. Now, before anybody gets angry, hear me out. Were Michael's views generally more progressive? Absolutely. Were many of his positions ahead of their time? Without question. Was Archie frequently on the wrong side of history? Yes. But that does not mean Michael was always right in the way he approached people. That is where certainty becomes important. Michael did not simply believe his ideas were correct. He often believed they were unquestionably correct. There is a difference, and that difference shaped nearly every major conflict in the series. Think about the classic setup. Archie is sitting in his chair. Michael walks into the room. Some topic comes up. Politics, race, religion, economics, the Vietnam War, women's rights, labor issues. Within moments, the debate begins. Most viewers focus on what the two men are saying. But if you pay attention to how they argue, something fascinating emerges. Both men approach conversations with extraordinary confidence. Both men assume they know the truth. Both men believe the other person is fundamentally misguided. And both men are usually preparing their next response instead of listening. That is why their arguments feel so authentic. Because real arguments often work exactly the same way. People are not exchanging ideas. They are defending identities. Michael's certainty becomes especially interesting because the audience often agrees with him more than Archie. That creates a unique dynamic. Viewers naturally expect Michael to be the voice of reason. And many times he is. But Norman Lear constantly reminds us that being correct about an issue does not automatically make someone wise. Let that sink in. Being right and being wise are not the same thing. Michael frequently possesses the stronger argument. Yet he sometimes lacks the patience, empathy, or humility needed to persuade people. That is a huge part of his character. Another hot take. I think Michael occasionally needed Archie as much as Archie needed Michael. Now that sounds strange. After all, the two men spent years driving each other crazy. But their relationship forced both characters to confront weaknesses in their own thinking. Archie challenged Michael's assumptions. Michael challenged Archie's assumptions. Without that conflict, neither character would have been nearly as interesting. One of the decisions Norman Lear ever made was refusing to turn Michael into a perfect hero. That would have been easy. It would have been safe. It would have been boring. Instead, Michael is intelligent but arrogant, passionate but impatient, compassionate but sometimes dismissive, progressive but occasionally self-righteous. Those contradictions make him feel real, and his certainty is at the center of many of them. Rob deserves tremendous credit for this performance, because playing certainty is harder than people think. The character could easily have become unbearable. Nobody likes being lectured. Nobody likes being talked down to, yet somehow made Michael likable even when he was frustrating. That is a difficult balancing act. Part of it comes from humor. Michael's confidence often gets him into trouble. He walks into arguments believing he has all the answers. Then something unexpected happens. Archie says something that catches him off guard. Asks a simple question he cannot immediately answer. Gloria challenges his behavior. Suddenly, Michael looks less certain than before. Those moments are important. They humanize him. They remind viewers that certainty is not the same thing as understanding. One of the most fascinating recurring patterns in the series involves Michael underestimating other people. Particularly, like Archie, Michael occasionally assumes is less perceptive than she really is. And time after time proves otherwise. She cuts through complicated debates with simple emotional truths. She sees things both men miss. And in those moments, Michael's certainty gets challenged. Not by ideology, not by politics, by humanity. That is brilliant writing, because it demonstrates that intelligence comes in many forms. Academic knowledge matters. Political awareness matters. But emotional intelligence matters too. Sometimes understands situations more clearly than either Michael or Archie. And that realization often catches Michael completely off guard. Now let us talk about the historical context. When All in the Family premiered in 1971, America was experiencing enormous cultural change. The Vietnam War divided the country. The Civil Rights Movement transformed social conversations. The women's movement challenged traditional expectations. Young Americans increasingly questioned institutions that previous generations trusted. Michael represented that younger generation. He embodied many of its hopes, frustrations, and ideals. And for many viewers, he was absolutely right. But Norman Lear wisely understood that every generation can become trapped by certainty. Even the generation advocating change. That insight makes the show timeless. Because certainty is not limited to conservatives. It is not limited to liberals. It is a human tendency. People want answers. People want clarity. People want to believe they understand the world. Michael reflects that desire just as strongly as Archie does. One of the reasons the character remains relevant today is because modern society often rewards certainty. Social media rewards certainty. Political discourse rewards certainty. Television debates reward certainty. Everyone wants to sound confident. Everyone wants to appear correct. Very few people want to admit uncertainty. Michael's character serves as a fascinating reminder that confidence and wisdom are not always the same thing. And honestly, I think that lesson has become even more important over time. Another hot take. Some of the best Michael episodes are the ones where he realizes he does not have all the answers. Those moments reveal tremendous character depth. They show growth. They show vulnerability. Most importantly, they show humility. Because humility is the natural enemy of certainty. When Michael becomes less focused on winning arguments and more focused on understanding people, he becomes a much stronger character. That is why his interactions with are often so compelling. Rarely argues from certainty. She argues from compassion. Michael argues from logic, argues from empathy. And the contrast is fascinating. Neither approach is completely sufficient on its own. But together they create something powerful. That dynamic helped make All in the Family more than just a political sitcom. It became a study of human nature, a study of family, a study of communication, and a study of what happens when people become convinced they already know everything. As we look back on Michael today, it becomes clear why he remains such an important television character. He was not simply the liberal son-in-law. He was not simply Archie's opponent. He represented a generation struggling to build a better future. But he also represented the dangers of believing that good intentions automatically equal complete understanding. That complexity is what makes him memorable. That complexity is what makes him realistic. And that complexity is what makes All in the Family such a masterpiece. My final verdict is simple. Michael's certainty was both his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. It gave him the courage to challenge injustice. It gave him the confidence to confront prejudice. It gave him the determination to fight for change. But it also blinded him at times. It made him dismissive. It made him impatient. It made him underestimate people who possessed wisdom different from his own. And that combination of strengths and flaws turned him into one of the most compelling characters in television history. What do you think? Was Michael sometimes just as stubborn as Archie? Did his certainty help or hurt him throughout the series? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. Drop a like if you enjoy these deep dives into classic television. Subscribe for more discussions about All in the Family, Norman Lear, Archie Bunker, Michael, and the shows that changed television forever. Share this video with fellow fans of television history. Turn on notifications so you never miss future episodes. And trust me, we have many more fascinating character studies coming soon.